to the conference cycle of the PhD program.
I think we lost Professor Marina, didn't we?
Okay, I thought it was just me.
No, maybe something happened with her connection.
Yes,
because I don't see her here in the screen also, so maybe. Just waiting for her to realize and to figure out how to come in again.
She's reconnecting.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Just so. Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did, but I managed to come back. So I was just saying good afternoon to everyone, or I don't know if it's good morning, but it's different, sure, in Canada. And welcome to the conference cycle of the PhD Psychology program of University of Porto. The PhD Psychology program seeks to foster a stimulating research environment that can offer doctoral students the opportunity to attend the conference cycle with outstanding national and international researchers. Also, the opportunity to introduce students in the discussion of relevant topics, as well as the opportunity for contacts with foreign research centers. As part of our 8th conference cycle, we received today Franco Carnevale. Franco Carnevale is a psychologist, nurse, and clinical ethicist. He is the founder and principal investigator of VOICE. VOICE is Views on Interdisciplinary Childhood Ethics. And this is an international initiative to advance knowledge and practices relating to ethical concerns in childhood. Franco Carnevale is a full professor at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. He has numerous clinical affiliations as a clinical ethics consultant in child and youth mental health, general pediatrics, as well as pediatric hospice. He is also a founding member of the McGill Qualitative Health Research Group at McGill University. Franco has been already collaborating with us, in particular with the research group on development and education from our Center of Psychology at the University of Porto. One example within this collaboration is that he is a doctoral thesis co-supervisor of one student from our PhD psychology program, Isabel Fidalgo, who also did a research stay at the McGill University. In fact, she is there now in this moment. And this collaboration takes place within the line of research conducted by Margarida Henriques. Today, he will offer us a conference on innovations in qualitative research with children and youth, a unique opportunity to hear about recent advances and prospects in a groundbreaking area of unquestionable relevance for psychology research. So, thank you again for cooperating with the University of Porto PhD Psychology program. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Lemos, for that really wonderful and very, very kind introduction and welcome. And before I start, I have to say I feel really honored to have this opportunity to meet with you. I hope we will have more meetings in the future. And I want to also acknowledge how privileged I have felt in having the opportunity of working with Margarita Enriquez, who's part of your faculty team. We've had incredibly rich exchanges, and I appreciate learning from her and with her. And what a gift it has been to be able to work with Isabel Fidalgo, your doctoral student. I've known her for a few years now, and it has been just an incredibly rich and productive exchange. And I will continue working with both of you as long as you are interested. So I want to share the screen and put on my slides so that we can start talking about some things. And so let me just adjust my screen here. Okay. Oops. So that here you see the information that was just presented about me. And so you've learned a little bit about me. And I want to take this opportunity to say hello from Montreal. Montreal in Canada is a place that I think is quite nice. We have all of the seasons. In the autumn, it's quite interesting because the trees change colors and it could be really quite beautiful. And then in the winter, it looks like this. In fact, just for credibility, today we are in the middle of November, and we have quite a big snowfall. And I won't show it to you now because I don't want to stop my slides. But if you want to come to Montreal, maybe don't come in the wintertime unless you like to be in the snow. This picture was taken on my street. So I'm going to be talking about qualitative research with children and youth and some innovations in the ways in which we do research with children and youth. And I'm going to be describing a lot of the work that we are doing with our research program that is called VOICE. And it's called VOICE for a particular reason, because we are concentrating on the voice of children and youth. For the purposes of this presentation, I will use the term young people to refer to children and youth, just so it's a bit more convenient. This is a focus on doing research with children that is specifically centered on understanding their experiences and recognizing that their experiences matter in ways that are very meaningful, which are frequently disregarded. This shift and this focus on children's experiences that I'm talking about and the work that we're doing goes back to what is probably the most extraordinary study, I would say, that has really initiated this focus on a rich concentration on children's experiences. And this is by anthropologist Myra Bluban-Legner. She is still doing research, and she is very strongly affiliated with VOICE and is one of the founding members and really helped us in how we designed our VOICE research program. This study was published in 1978. It was her PhD work, and she did an ethnographic study of children with cancer in an oncology department. She worked with children who were from 3 to 9 years old. And what she found interesting in the work that she did was that there was a cultural taboo about talking about cancer and death with children. Parents, as well as doctors and nurses, all had a very silent agreement that we won't tell the child that they have cancer, and we don't talk to the child about the possibility of death. And the idea was that they were protecting the child, that they were protecting them from the distress that those conversations could cause. What Myra Bluban-Legner found as an anthropologist, spending many months inside the department, doing participant observation and forming very personal, trusting relationships with the children in this department, was that they had many questions. They asked her, do I have cancer? Am I going to die? So she found that, in fact, they had greater understanding and awareness of what was going on with them than the adults acknowledged. But what she found that was particularly interesting was, whereas the adults were not talking about cancer and death with the children in order to protect the children learned that there was this taboo, and that if they asked their parents or if they asked the doctors and nurses about cancer or death, that it would bother them, that it would disturb them. And so, ironically, children who were supposed to be protected were themselves trying to protect the adults from being uncomfortable. This was really a groundbreaking study, because it really demonstrated that children have much more complex awareness than we give them credit for, and that they are also mindful of how other people around them are thinking and worrying, and they want to take care of them. This created a very big tradition of research within social studies of children that had, for a long time, it took many decades before it started to enter into health and other professional fields. It really remained exclusively within anthropology and sociology, and not so much within the professional disciplines. In our own team, Voice, this is what we call the first study that started everything. This is where Voice started. And it was a study that was published in 2006 in a very big pediatric journal. And it was a study that we conducted to understand the everyday experiences of disabled children who required technology to help them breathe at home. We believed when we did the study that their lives were very difficult, and we were very worried about all the technologies that they had to live with. What we found very interesting, and this was the first study of its kind where we actually spoke to children themselves about their experiences with these technologies, and what we found was they had very rich reflections, even at a young age. A 9-year-old girl said, "I think I will need it for a long time, a very long time. It helps me to breathe, so I don't care. It's okay with me to have it. It's better to have it, the tracheostomy, which is a hole here in the throat that helps them to breathe, and the respirator. It's better to have those than being dead." This is a 9-year-old. A 4.5-year-old girl had a machine called a BiPAP that helped her to breathe because she didn't have enough strength to breathe independently. And she gave that machine a nickname, a little name, and she called it her PAP. "My PAP makes me happy. I really like my PAP. My PAP is good because it helps me to breathe." What we learned in doing this qualitative research with these children, where we were trying to understand their experiences, was that we had prejudice about the technologies, and we had prejudice about disability, and we thought that their lives were only difficult, only disabled, and that they had very few pleasures. We also learned that they did not see the technology as a problem. They saw the technology as a support. It assisted them. It really helped to amplify their lives. And these children said, "It's like the way people use glasses to see better. I have a respirator that helps me to breathe better." So this was a very high impact study that was considered a really new way of understanding the experiences of disabled children. And so we went on to build the work that we're doing now in Voice. The work that we're doing in Voice is building on a bigger field that is called childhood studies. Childhood studies has its origins on the work of Myra Bluban-Langner, the oncology study from 1970s. She's one of the pioneers in creating this field of childhood studies, and it is many, many disciplines that work together to understand childhood from many, many different perspectives, as well as internationally. I am about to say something that some of you might find controversial. One of the biggest contributions that come from childhood studies, and also the most controversial, is that they have attacked the tendency to define child development in terms of very fixed age-based stages. That drawing on the tradition of Piaget, Kohlberg, Erikson, there is this common view that children all follow a very same progression based on certain years and based on their age. And childhood studies and using the approaches that they have developed in their methods. So this is an example of a very respected textbook on research approaches in childhood studies. They have examined children's experiences and they have demonstrated that these models that we use of child development are not valid. They are based on very outdated designs that are not representative of the wide range of children's experiences, not representative of different cultures, different gender experiences, and different social class experiences. And so childhood studies, and we build on this in the work we do on voice, criticizes the equation of age with a specific ability, knowledge, or attitude. Childhood studies has demonstrated that, in fact, children's capacities are very strongly dependent on their relational context. Relational context can really advance and amplify their linguistic capacities, their capacities to understand, their capacities to assume responsibility, to participate in discussions and decisions like cancer treatments, like youth protection decisions, or the social context can compromise their capacities. So if you never talk to a child about cancer, you never talk to a child about death, you don't talk to a child about diabetes, if you don't talk to a child about the risks and the dangers of bullying within the school, then their ability to be involved and take responsibility is compromised. Voice has done a lot of work since that 2006 study. We've published a lot, and I am happy to share the slides at the end for anybody who wants. So you just send me an email and I will gladly send it to you. And I'm saying send me an email because then we have an opportunity for a dialogue, and you can write to me in Portuguese. I love to see it, and I will answer you in English. These are a couple of our more foundational papers that really describe some of the theoretical orientation that we've been building in the work that we're doing in voice. Among the many features of the work that we're doing, and there are many, one of them, and it is a very important one, is interdisciplinarity. Interdisciplinary is a word that we hear a lot. And sometimes we even say multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary. Sometimes we say interprofessional, and that often means bringing people together with different perspectives. I have been in many teams like that, and I have never felt that they were truly interdisciplinary, because interdisciplinarity means that you make a commitment to really learn from each other and really ensure that you are producing outputs and contributions that is not just the sum of all the pieces. You have reciprocal exchanges so that everyone is really seeing things differently. And so for our team, you have on the right-hand side there just some of the many fields that are included within our voice team. And these are, so we have senior researchers in all of these areas working together to engage in this kind of interdisciplinarity. Childhood studies, as well as voice, we criticize age-based stages, and we instead use this as a framework for understanding children's experiences. And so that's agency. Now, this is a term that some of you may not be familiar with, or some of you may be. Children, it is recognizing that every child is a moral agent. They think, they feel, they experience, and things are meaningful for them. And they are continually judging what is particularly important for them. If what is important for them is not the same as what is important for you, it is not less morally meaningful for them. And what is morally important for them, if it is blocked, if it is interfered with, it can result in tremendous distress, humiliation, and sometimes trauma. We have defined children's agency as the children's capacity to act deliberately, speak for themselves, and actively reflect on their social worlds, shaping their lives and the lives of others. We have, in the work that we're doing, developed our own research methodology called participatory hermeneutic ethnography. That's a lot of words, and if you're not familiar with these terms, I will say a little bit about each one of them. Crucial in this is that we have made a commitment to using primarily qualitative research because we want to understand experiences, not exclusively, and we do sometimes we do quantify in some areas, but our specific expertise and our focus on experience drives us to use qualitative research. Qualitative research is particularly advantageous and interesting in working with children because it really levels the relationship. It can level the relationship between the researcher and the child because it often requires conversation. It often requires entering into the child's world. And so it can help to break down some of that hierarchy. And also qualitative approaches can be very flexible. They often require that a relationship is built with the child. So for some children, participating in the study is otherwise very unusual. Sitting at filling out forms and questionnaires and so on could be very uncomfortable for some children. And then the result of that is if we don't have adapted methodologies where they are comfortable, we end up producing knowledge that is systematically excluding big parts of childhood populations because they don't volunteer or they may not have the linguistic capacity to participate in some of the more structured designs. So as I said, we've created this methodology that we call participatory hermeneutic ethnography, and each word matters. Participatory means that we require engagement and we work in partnership with the persons that we're interested in. So first of all, we build long-standing community partnerships with community organizations. So the community organizations help us. These are examples of some on our website. There's, I don't know, more than 40 kinds of partnerships that we work with. And these are just some examples. And so with community partners, they help us identify priorities that have arisen in their relationships with the young people that they work with. But that is only one part of participation. That is having community organizations partner with us. Particularly important form of participation is engaging young people themselves. And more, the tradition is to have youth advisors. You can have, so for voice, we have a youth advisory council. We have an indigenous youth advisory council because we have many indigenous populations within Canada, and those require specialized approaches. And then we work with some of these other groups that are here, as well as others that have specialization. So Childbright is an organization that works with children who have, they use the term brain-based disabilities. So learning disabilities, autism, speech and language problems, and so on. And Voice, and particularly myself, worked with Childbright to form a youth advisory panel. So they have youth advisors that help the researchers design their studies, help the researchers design their methods, their ways of interviewing, their ways of recruitment, the ways in which they analyze data, and the ways in which they use the results in a way that is respectful and supportive of the aspirations of young people. And same with the one on the left, Holland Bloorview. This is another youth advisory council that we've worked with, and that is focused on a broader range of disabilities, and so on. So this is a very important trend. So for example, all of the research that is done by a voice researcher, it goes to our youth advisory council and they do a review. They have research training and they send a report. And then if we are going to give funding to a researcher, we want to see that the researcher will respect the comments of the youth advisors. So I said participatory hermeneutic research. So that's some of the ways, and let me just add, participation is not only in the design of the studies, and in many of our studies, we build in youth advisors within the study itself so that we might have a small panel, and this could be potential participants that we consult with all the way through the course of the study who give us advice on the way in which we are conducting the study and help us sometimes with the analysis of the results. So that's a little bit about participation. Now, hermeneutics. Now, that might be a term that some of you are familiar with or not familiar with. And so hermeneutics is essentially sort of the science of interpretation. It is a strong philosophical tradition that has been translated into a qualitative methodology that is really looking at how to interpret what is going on here by examining the parts and the whole. So it's a very elaborate interpretive approach, and the hermeneutical concept that we are focused on is moral experience. So within the research we do in voice, we are interested in experiences of children, yes, but specifically we are interested in their moral experiences. And that means we want to learn from children, and we want to reveal and project everywhere what children say is important to them. What, in their view, is right and wrong, good or bad, just or unjust, so that they can be more strongly recognized as moral agents. So we use moral experience, and this is the question that is behind almost all of our research: is what is this child's moral experience? We want to better understand their view of what's right and wrong in the way they're treated and the way in which other people are treated. This hermeneutical framework requires a very structured approach to be able to analyze voices. And by voices, we don't mean just spoken word. We also mean actions. We mean silence. We mean a diary. We mean drawings. All the different ways in which children express themselves. We develop a structured method for being able to understand what does this mean. And I'm not going to get into the details here, but it requires forming a safe and trusting relationship with the participants so that what they express is what they are naturally experiencing, so that we don't have an artificial circumstance. And it requires building a strongly empathic relationship with the child, the young person, so that we can try to understand as accurately as possible what they're thinking, feeling, and experiencing. And so what we do is we try to get them to express whatever we can. We try to interpret what we think is what we think we understand, and then we seek their verification, either with the child themselves or with someone who knows them well, like, for example, a parent. We think of parents or someone else who knows the child well as a relational interlocutor who really helps us to generate data from the child and then to really verify our analysis and our interpretation of what they are expressing. And so these are all part of what we mean by hermeneutics. And again, everything I'm saying here would be a 3-hour presentation, almost every word that we're looking at here. But so I'll send you the slides, and we do have other articles on this, and hopefully you'll ask me to meet with you again another time. Participatory hermeneutic ethnography. So the ethnography means that, and this is drawing from the main methodology in anthropology and a big one in sociology, is using participant observation and ethnography. And that means we try to study young people's experiences in the place in which they are occurring as much as possible. Here's an example of one publication we have, and it's with Myra Bluban-Langner, the first slide that I showed you. We did this work together on how do you do ethnographic participant observation with young people, and this one was for healthcare settings. And so ethnography requires immersion inside the social world of the child so that we have the opportunity to actually see them navigate their worlds, and then that helps us ask them questions directly based on their everyday experiences that we have the opportunity to see. Let's go a bit more concretely now. If that's the methodology, participatory hermeneutic ethnography, how do we concretely do this? Well, generally, we would use all of the qualitative methods So I want to make a distinction between methodology. Methodology is what I just described. Methodology is it involves a theoretical orientation, like moral experiences and agency, for example. So it's a theoretical orientation that could be referred to as an epistemological and an ontological orientation. That's methodology. Methods is the techniques, the data collection techniques that you're going to use. It's much more concrete. And so with ethnography, almost always you're going to do participant observation because you want to, first of all, because many children's linguistic capacities could be limited, or they may not have a relationship with you where they will share what they share with other people. And so entering into their world and seeing them in action is usually a much richer way to generate data with young people. But we could use interviews. And we've done interviews with even very young children, as young as 3. We usually, below 3, we're not confident that we have the skills to be able to really conduct a meaningful interview. And we use observation mainly below 3 years. We've done group interviews with young children, and they can work really well, particularly if you make them as natural and familiar, and if you conduct them in their spaces. We can have them provide a report, so children can write. It could be a diary or a blog, like a digital blog, or using other ways in which they want to share their experiences with you. Or we can use creative methods. And I think many of you who work with children are probably using these professionally as well as in research. So we all know about drawing and dolls and puppets and games and toys and photos and cartoons. So we use all of these. This is not new, but we integrate them with all these other things. We integrate them with the participant observation, with the interview, so that we're continually in a dialogue with the participant to understand, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for you? I wish I could tell you how we analyze all this data. I tell you this would take a minimum of 3 to 8 hours to explain how you analyze this data, but we have a publication coming up very soon, and you have an expert within you in Isabel, because she has been suffering through the experience of trying to analyze her data, is that we have a very detailed procedures for coding, pulling out, what are the significant parts in the data, whether it's interviews, observation. When you do observations, you write field notes, very detailed field notes, then they're very structured. What you see and hear, what you think is going on. So it's all structured with different columns. So you generate little codes, you take those codes, you organize them into themes, and then you write interpretive narratives to really try to come up with an interpretation that can help us understand transversely what the experiences of these children would be. What I just said in about 60 seconds is a real caricature. So this paper will be coming out soon, and I'm happy to share it when it has come out. And here's just a couple of slides to show you the kind of outputs that this kind of work can have. So this one came out fairly recently, I think just last year, I believe. And this is looking at the everyday life of young people at school, in primary school and in secondary school. And the idea of this was to really be able to understand their moral experiences in their everyday lives. And it's a very, very detailed ethnography of their everyday lives. Some of the other research is research that we've conducted. So at the bottom left, the moral experiences of crisis management in a child mental health setting. And this was a study looking at the experiences of children in a psychiatric department when they are being controlled or restrained during a crisis moment. And then we have, vulnerability becomes a strength, a study we did with young people who have experienced violence, and looking at how a community organization has been helpful for them. And then at the very bottom, this is the moral experience of children who live in poverty. And this was done in a community organization that is helping children with their homework from school. Simple thing like helping homework. but it really created a safe space where these children shared their everyday experiences of living in poverty and how they felt at school. And sometimes the teachers acted in ways that amplified their distress. Sometimes teachers treated them in ways that they found humiliating. And so these kinds of results can be very, very important in really re-examining everyday practices of various professionals. The work that we're doing, all of this is with community organizations. It could be schools and so on. But we are also doing this work on a global scale. And because you are Portuguese people, I put in a couple of Brazilian ones at the bottom here, so that we have been working with Brazilian partners for a very, very long time, probably since 2008. I think I might have more publications in Brazil than anywhere else. I mean, it's a very productive partnership where we working with local partners, and that's the way we always do it, is local leaders are interested in using some of these ideas, and then we design studies that are responding to local priorities or concerns. On the top left, this was done in rural Tanzania, and it was looking at teenagers using peer-to-peer education regarding sexual health and HIV prevention. They lived in a community where there was a real taboo to use condoms and to have sexual health education, because the idea was that if you teach them about prevention of HIV transmission, it will increase their sexual activity. And so the young people themselves took responsibility and have been teaching each other. And for us, this is a beautiful example of agency, that they are moral agents. They are concerned about HIV and they want to help each other. Top right is a pediatric oncology in India. And these are, again, just examples. So with those examples. So I want to give you a more detailed example of one specific study, and then I'm almost at the end for discussion. I didn't know which one to choose. We have so many studies that we're doing. I tried to pick one that I think I could present more simply in a short period of time. And so this was a study of children who are critically ill. They're in an intensive care unit. And we did the study to understand what made them feel comfortable and what made them feel uncomfortable. So what were their experiences of discomfort and comfort using this methodology? So we had children from 3 to 17 years of age, and these are the questions that we adapted, and we always adapted the questions. We always didn't ask us, tell us about comfort and discomfort. We have to use their own language, so make a drawing of yourself when you were in the intensive care unit. What made you unhappy, or what made you happy? What was it like for you to be there? What made you feel bad? What made you feel good? So we really keep trying. There's a lot of improvisation that's required to try to get them to describe their experiences. We also did, now this is just to impress you. I'm not expecting you to read this. This is an example of a participant observation. I did this one. This is a field note of just trying to describe the bedside of that child so that the readers have an idea of how extraordinarily child unfriendly it is. But then speaking directly with the children, having them draw what their memories are of being in the ICU is like, and then seeing them describe how the presence of mama and papa, thinking about their pets at home, thinking about their brothers and sisters at home, were very important comforts. And so again, this was a 9-year-old, but we were able to get very rich data, even as young as 3 and a bit years old. And again, we're not going to go into the details, but on the basis of all this research, which involved 12 children, we were able to identify fears and worries, invasive interventions that really distressed them and caused great discomfort. And then we were able to take all of that and really have a synthesis, and the results being that this was the first study of this kind in this population, asking about these kinds of experiences. And so we were able to, first of all, show that methodologically it's possible to engage with these young people, to discuss about comfort and discomfort, that they were able to describe the many discomforts that they had, and that their comforts were mainly relational. So the presence of parents, for example. And now we're doing a new study because we were very concerned about during the pandemic, when there was a restriction of parental access to children in many places, that would create a lot of distress and discomfort in children. That's just a brief example. Again, it's very superficial, and the study has much more depth than that. And I'm not going through all of the results here so that we have some time for discussion. And I just want to close with two points in terms of where is the future. What have we learned in the work that we're doing, and what are we concerned about for the future? One is knowledge mobilization. What ways should we be using this knowledge that is being generated through this kind of research? And one thing we're learning is that we need to diversify the way we disseminate. And so, of course, many of us are all disseminating our research through academic publications and conferences. And of course, that's important because we need to exchange with each other. But if we believe that this is work that we're doing in partnership with young people, then we need to look at how we promote and engage in dissemination with young people. And so, I appreciate going to groups like youth panels and so on, and having a dialogue with them where they want to get a researcher perspective on something. They would sometimes ask me to methodologically interpret the results of a particular study, but also to take some of our results and put them on social media so that some youth groups might either comment on it, and they might criticize it, or they might promote it. And you have to be prepared to see how that goes. But to really look at dissemination much more diversely, I'd be interested to know any suggestions and experiences any of you have with effective and novel ways to promote dissemination of knowledge. But mobilization is not just about throwing around your knowledge. You need to use it. And so it means practice changes. So I am an ethics consultant as well as a psychologist and a nurse. As an ethics consultant, so for example, when I do ethics consultations in pediatric psychiatry, what does it mean to recognize agency in a young person who does not want to eat, who has anorexia? If they don't want to eat, or if they want to harm themselves by cutting themselves, what does it mean to recognize them as agents, but yet at the same time be aware that they are still minors and there's a responsibility to protect them as minors? And so how do we engage young people in participation in discussions and decisions about their care, whether it's cancer or whether it's psychiatry? One thing that we have learned in the work that we're doing is that in most places, when we talk about participating and consenting to care, it's usually based on the young person's capacity to participate in a discussion and a decision about their care. The work that we've been doing shows that the capacity is not fixed. The capacity can be strengthened or diminished based on the way in which you relate with the child, based on the way in which you explain what the problem is. Let's say, for example, you're concerned about their not eating. They have anorexia. You're concerned that they're eating so little that it's harming their body and that they could die. So the way in which you explain it and that you create a safe, trusting space for them to ask questions. So practice changes. Policy changes, looking at the ways in which when we make policies about the use of restraints, policies regarding consent, policies regarding bullying in the schools, intimidation, however you want to call it, is how do we make them in ways that are more childhood-centered? And one big shift that is going on is that they should involve youth advisors. And so some schools, for example, will have advisory groups. Frequently, when the government in Canada is wanting to do some changes in legislation that could affect young people, they will ask our group on how to put them in touch with youth groups so that they can get youth advisory input on changes to legislation. So that's quite new, and I think that's quite exciting. I think one of the biggest things we've been putting our energy into is changing the the curriculum in the preparation of professionals. And so we are looking at how to train professionals in all of the disciplines that work with young people, social work, medicine, nursing, dentistry, teachers, lawyers, on preparing students to work with young people in a way that is more respectful and recognizing them as moral agents. The view that we have learned from childhood studies is the old-fashioned, and keep in mind that all of the books, all the professional books still, and by the way, and psychology too, of course, by professional professions, psychology as well, is a lot of the textbooks still have these old age-based models that everybody is being taught. And the worry we have is it makes young people look deficient. It creates this idea of immaturity and then disqualifies them for being listened to in a serious way. And are there other approaches we should mobilize this knowledge? And maybe you have suggestions. The last point I want to make before I stop for discussion is, what is the future in terms of engaging children and youth in designing studies and in using knowledge that is generated through childhood research? We know that we want to inform practice, policy, governing structures, and research, but how do we do it? And these questions it's not clear. This is still a work in progress. Why do we want to engage youth? I've given you some suggestions on why that's important. Who? Does it have to be, for example, do youth advisors have to be people who are living with the problem that you're looking at? So if it's a mental health population, how should your youth advisory group be composed? How do they participate? Live meetings, online? How should what they say be used? Is it absolute? Is what they say going to define definitively how you will change a policy, for example? Or is it only advisory? What is known about young people engagement? What works? And what is needed to support it? A couple of things that we've learned to support youth engagement is that you have to adapt your schedule to theirs. So if you have a youth advisory council and it meets every Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well, if they go to school, then they are either going to miss school or they're going to miss your meeting. So it needs to be on a Saturday, probably. And they need remuneration because we are being paid for the time that we are with them. We ensure that when youth participate as advisors, that they have some compensation for their time. How much and what kind of compensation? We discuss that with our youth advisors and ask them what seems reasonable. Because if it's a large amount, then it could be coercive. Who could say no to $100, for 1 hour because it's just so much money? It should be reasonable. It should be where they can still say no if they don't want to do it and not be losing a lot of money because of it. And as I said, I am really happy to receive your emails, your comments, even your criticisms. Please be gentle if you're going to criticize. So if you send me an email and if you want the slides, I'm happy to share them with you. And that's our website and our Twitter handle. We'll see where Twitter goes with Elon Musk controlling it now. We'll see if it survives. And I will stop the screen share and then I'll be able to see you all better.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I am really thrilled with your conference and knowing that maybe I am always, I would always be reducing all the richness. If I had to select one word, it would be innovative. I think that your methodological approach, closely related to the new knowledge, I think it's really new knowledge that you get from this methodological approach, and also so apparently so closely translate, easy, not easy, but possible to translate into professional practice with children, namely in this context of health context or other. So thank you very much. I don't want to take now many time to other participants who I imagine would like to make a comment, just to underline the richness that I heard in your conference. Thank you for this contribution.
Well, thank you for your kind words. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay. Now I left we have some maybe 10 minutes that we can use. Please, who would like to make any comment or just go on? If needed, I will organize the discussion, but please begin and I will follow you. Okay, I can see the hand of Joana Kadima. Joana is our colleague here at our department.
Hello, thank you very much for your inspiring presentation. It was really, really interesting, and I look forward to read more of your papers, but maybe I can take advantage of this moment and ask you to detail a little bit more about the studies with socially disadvantaged children. I was very interested to learn more about what you have discovered, the kind of experience and feelings and so on that children shared with you.
Wow, how to answer that question? First of all, what a question. One of the things is that we're concerned about is the way this idea of vulnerability is used. I don't know if in your if in Portugal there's been a move towards a social model of vulnerability, and so that's something that we are finding, that the way in which we characterize socially disadvantaged young people as vulnerable is sometimes really degrading. It lowers them and it puts them in a situation of pity. And so we are really, and we haven't written much about vulnerability yet. We're going to be doing some work on this, but this really came out during the pandemic, and we have some new work that we hope to publish soon, is that vulnerability is a social phenomenon, and it is social contexts that vulnerabilize. So, for example, in a community that has, for example, a lot of adaptations for people with disabilities, so you have places for wheelchairs to go, and you have elevators and all that, they are less vulnerable. And there are many accommodations that are in place, and they are more vulnerable in a context where there are a lot of barriers. Similarly, in socially disadvantaged, and that often means vulnerability, perhaps living, what goes with vulnerability is that sometimes there are undiagnosed, untreated learning disabilities, speech problems, mental health problems, child and or parent. And we found all of this in children living within socially disadvantaged contexts, very, very common. And we're seeing this in the community organizations that we're working with. And so what we have found is that built-in discrimination and attitudes towards poverty is maintaining a systemic vulnerabilization, where there are many, many obstacles to getting the care that they required. And we've been trying to show that through the work that we're doing. And on the basis of that, because voice is not only about producing knowledge, it's knowledge and action all of the time. And so we are right now, for example, building a social pediatric clinic in one of our community organizations, where given that these families feel discriminated against and judged by healthcare professionals, and so there's, they don't want the diagnosis of autism or speech disability and so on, is then we're bringing the services to their community in a space where they feel comfortable with professionals who are working with them more respectfully. So I guess that's the only, I could go on and on, of course, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this too, is to be aware that because they also have strength. You see parents that care about their child, but have, limited ability to find solutions because of all the obstacles that they face. And so we work with them to mobilize the strengths that they have and bring down some of the obstacles they commonly face. Professor Enriquez.
Yes, Margarida, please.
So thank you very much for your presentation, and it's we need to read and reread and to have a lot of questions, and a more theoretical for me, it's always difficult to I would like to know more why moral agency, moral experience, moral agent. What would be the difference if we have just agency, experience? It's always something more. I would like to know maybe in this field of interdisciplinarity and the raising of this choice for the moral. And more practical, I would like to know how do you see to do the children research and the use of the assents to the child. Is it enough? How we can do to have the guarantee that the child is really answer by themselves in this kind of asymmetrical, powerful position that they usually interpret being in the request to the adult, because we are adults asking to something, to this assent. Usually, I don't know if we do it well, but usually we say that their parents also allow the participation in when we do this, it's in the perspective to give the quietness that it's not just is a responsibility, and they have to know the opinion of their parents, but at the same time it can also as the effect to pressure and to do. So my question is it just adultocentric is false care, or is it useful and is it interesting for the child? Thank you.
First of all, do I have time to answer? Because we're already over the hour. May I answer? Is that okay? Do I have the time? I have permission? There's two parts to your question, Margarita. First, what is with all this moral stuff? What we want to do is distinguish the work that we're doing from more ordinary focus on children's experiences, because it is possible to study children's experiences in a way that maintains the traditional developmental models. And so, for example, there is research on children's grief, the loss, lutto, that a child will feel when somebody dies. And if you use the traditional developmental model to understand their experiences, our view is that you have a priori prejudgment about their experiences because you're bringing in this age-based theories. So the idea about using moral is that we want to be able to demonstrate, reveal that children are much more, things matter for them, things are meaningful for them. What is at stake when a decision is being made that affects them is impactful for them. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and when what they're concerned about and what they're hoping for is not taken into consideration, it can be profoundly traumatizing, distressing, or humiliating, as I said before. So moral means meaningfulness. We want to understand the meaningful part of experience. You can take away moral if you want, as long as, I just use the word experiences through most of my presentation, but I defined experiences then as moral experiences, the meaningful part of the experiences. That's the first question. I love your second question about assent. I think that is the big challenge, is how do we sincerely recognize young people as agents with their own individual interests and invite them to participate both in a study, but also in care, healthcare, social care. We know that in different parts of the world, based on age or a certain capacity, they can have the legal right to consent, participate in a study, or to care. Assent is what would apply for young people who are not legally independent to consent by themselves. We have our own definition of assent, and that is that we have provided all of the information that is relevant to the decision that is to be made in a way that is adapted to their language and their way of understanding, and that we have optimally solicited their voluntary cooperation. And I would say this is also a moral aspiration on the researcher's part, and that we need to do that sincerely. And I think I really loved the way you asked it, because you're wondering how much is this sort of a paternalistic control that we, is it truly assent because we have so much power and influence? Well, one way to help to keep that in, because then that's not really assent. If we're intimidating or exercising power to get assent, it's not really assent, is to consult with youth advisors on what is the best way to approach. Having young people be research assistants. We really try to get even young adults, like 20 years old. A lot of our research is being done by 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, because we really find it really changes the power differential significantly. And first of all, it's an incredible experience for the young adult that to have that experience, but it really changes the dynamic in the way they enter into that field. And so, because if a child sees this face and they don't know this face, it takes a while to establish that this guy cares about me and is friendly and all that. So I hope that answers. But the really hard work, because assent is a clear standard for research with children, but it's not a standard for care or for professional practice. We're pushing very, very hard voice that it becomes a standard for clinical care. That if you're going to do a blood test and the child is kicking and screaming and just saying, no, I don't want this and all that, and you're holding them down and you're doing it anyway, that's not assent. And that's a moral problem. That doesn't mean sometimes you still need to do it, but we want to make sure that when you do things without assent, you need a very strong ethical rationale that it is in that child's best interest to continue without their assent. And that's the importance of not using these age-based models that characterize children as immature, ignorant, incompetent, incapables. Rather, if they are moral agents, what they think and feel, after you've tried your best to help them understand why this is important, chemotherapy, for example, and if they're still kicking and screaming, you keep trying and you keep trying, you find another way to do it if you can, under which conditions can we do it. But if something has grave consequences, it is ethically permissible, in my view, to still do it. But it should weigh heavy on our shoulders, and we have to keep trying to see if there's a way we can adapt the way we do it, where we do it, so that we can do the best we can to get their assent. So I think of assent as aspirational. It's an important ideal, and we should always try to do it as sincerely as possible. Isabel?
I know I was just wanting to share that I'm in a difficult and comfortable situation because at one point I know that these discussions about all these levels of research and the themes that we are discussion could go on and on for a long time because I'm doing this for the past months. And how does this interconnection of the theoretical levels and the things that your lines of thought and also connecting them with the practicalities of research and how ourselves as a researcher should or could be position ourselves in face of the children in relation with them are humongous. But I would like to also be mindful of the time of our meeting and also make a huge appeal that this is not the last opportunity that we have to speak and to converse, to be in direct conversation with you. So this idea of starting and ending this discussion, but connecting it, if possible, with other opportunities in the future, because I cannot always say that I'm super fan of your work, and I've been learning so much from it, and this is also my opportunity to say it in public. So it's very important to thank you all the help and the learning that you have been making available for me. So thank you a lot.
Well, thank you, Isabella. I think I'm a fan of your work, and what a privilege to see all of your data, and it's extraordinary the way you've been able to engage these young people. Yeah. Thank you for your kind words.
Yeah.
Someone else wishes to make just maybe one last question or comment? I am trying to see everyone. I don't think right now, anyone is asking for some questions. So I don't know if Margarida, for example, wants to make also a final comment based also on your collaborative work. Would you like to say a few words before I close the session, Margarida? I want to thank you also for making this connection with Professor Franco. It was really, really a very interesting conference in our cycle.
Maybe just to comment that I'm really very, very happy to see a lot of colleagues from our faculty, and think that in the future we can work together on this more deeply, and to have all of you as intellectors, because some of the students are more mobile and it is not so easy to maintain this opportunity. So thanks very much to Franco for this availability to be with us and to prepare to be. It was possible to synthesize a lot of things that it is your works to share with us, and to say that I would like very much to have the opportunity in the future to do some workshop or more direct work in the group on this topic in our faculty. And thank you all for to be here.
Yes, thank you again to Professor Franco, and also to this great number of people interested in this conference. It is also a pleasure for the PhD program to attract such interest in this thematic. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope I will see everyone soon and more work together. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Ok, estamos nós. ainda alguns mais. Yeah, claro.
Olá, Isabel. Olá, Isabel.
Também estão em Espanha, que estão no mesmo cenário. É um congresso.
A vocês.
É um congresso. Para conhecer.
Olha,
Oi, Pedro.
achei mesmo
muito bom, parabéns. Obrigada. Muito bom.
Muito, enfim, com pontos para várias coisas que no grupo estão fazendo, né? Nomeadamente convosco, que estão aqui mais ligadas, mas achei muito interessante, de facto, também outras pessoas que me pareceram muito interessadas, não é? E com pontos aqui que se podem ir fazendo. E achei, quer dizer, eu achei excelente do ponto de vista, como dizia a Isabel, quer dizer, do ponto de vista teórico, do ponto de vista prático, de implicações práticas e de metodologia de investigação. Eu acho que aqui, para mim, esta articulação foi das coisas que mais se evidenciou para mim e super interessantes, não é? Com muita inovação e com um potencial de novo conhecimento enorme, não é? Enorme. E, portanto, fiquei mesmo satisfeita com tudo isso e também, de facto, houve aqui seguramente um esforço grande da tua parte, Margarida, neste estimular da participação. Eu tinha algum receio que, não é, perante estas coisas de tão boa qualidade, não tivéssemos uma resposta enfim, minimamente condigna, digamos assim, porque as pessoas realmente têm muita coisa, é verdade, sem dúvida. Mas eu acho que estas conferências também, não é, o facto de serem, apesar de tudo, relativamente curtas, quer dizer, e assim o online também facilita, não é? Sim. Portanto, fiquei mesmo muito contente com esta sugestão, com a concretização desta sugestão, e eu logo no início, até, digamos, também com uma enorme generosidade, dizendo que vem com alguma frequência à Itália, e que realmente quem vem do Canadá, Itália e Portugal é um saltinho, não é? E de poder aqui concretizar outras coisas com ele. Excelente.
Não, mas essa rede foi muito aqui a Isabel, que também ativou a sua rede de contactos.
Muito bem, muito bem.
E todos os amigos que quiseram vir matar saudades da Isabel vieram aqui vê-la.
Não seja assim.
Nós temos expectativa de ver neve,
eu mostro-vos que isto está durinho, está ótimo. O primeiro dia estou super excitada, parece uma criança. Aqui dá para ver ali ao fundo. Aqui é ali ao fundo a neve, ali na estrada, e ali mais ao fundo a parte do campus tudo nevado.
Primeiro dia, só de um dia.
É o primeiro dia. Eu gostava de dizer é que eu senti que o professor Franco trouxe as pérolas do trabalho dele, ou seja, eu tenho estado muitas vezes com ele em diferentes ambientes e muitos contextos, e ele fez realmente aqui um esforço de condensar muitas coisas e de ser generoso e partilhar vários níveis de investigação. Cada slide eu já ouvi desenvolver horas e horas de cada um dos detalhes e portanto também eu acho que foi muito, eu acho que generoso nesta coisa de nos mostrar um bocadinho a paleta toda. Pode ter ficado um bocadinho intenso, e eu sei por experiência que queres entrar em contacto com esta, nem sei dizer em português, mas é hermeneutic, ethnography and participatory, são conceitos todos eles muito pesados e muito densos, e que na verdade fazem sentido ser assim, porque as coisas estão relacionadas, mas para uma primeira vez acho revelador e interessante, mas eu gostei, claro, mas sim.
Foi denso, mas eu acho que abrindo pistas, foi denso sem ser pesado, eu achei.
Sim, sim.
Acho que ele conseguiu dar assim
mapear, não é? Mapear sem ficar sem ir demasiado ao fundo em cada coisa.
Exato.
Mas acho que sim, que foi fantástico. Ele claramente preparou para este efeito, não é? Para este público.
Nós agora também, de qualquer maneira, hoje ou amanhã também, depois falando também contigo melhor um bocadinho, Margarida, podemos enviar um feedback escrito, um bocadinho também agradecendo por escrito
mas eu acho que por acaso se os colegas, a Diana, a Catarina, a Paula Mena Matos, até o Fernando Barbosa ali estava, eu acho que depois era de fazermos assim um pequenino, informal, nada de muito formal, mas se tu quiseres fazer uma pequenina sondagem do interesse que possa ter de facto despertado nestas pessoas, podíamos organizar uma coisa, uma vinda, como inicialmente se pensou, da abertura, mas mais também de workshop, um bocadinho ao nosso nível também, não só dedicado a estudantes, mas talvez também ao nosso nível, não é?
Para investigadores e docentes, sim, claro.
No fundo, orientamos tantos trabalhos e estágios, portanto, exatamente esta fronteira das duas coisas, da prática e da investigação nesta área, que acho que era interessante aprofundar.
Não, mas é o que eu digo, quer dizer, amanhã depois podemos falar, amanhã depois não, vocês não estão cá, mas quando estiverem, podemos falar um bocadinho de facto, enviar depois a ele alguma coisa demonstrando esse interesse, enfim, um esboço de organização de qualquer coisa que possa, e é que podemos juntar os colegas que estiveram aqui de outros grupos com interesses cruzados com isto, não é?
Tu achaste inovador, Diana e Catarina? Vocês acharam dentro das coisas da...
E estava a olhar para muitos dos resultados, dos estudos que ele apresentou e que não detalhou, e que tocam com coisas que eu e a Marina abordamos na psicologia pediátrica, não é? E, portanto, pronto, são muito interessantes a esse nível.
Sim, a mim fiquei muito presa à dimensão do luto e da partida, não é? E de facto do quão temos ainda um território aqui muito nebuloso, de tocar no assunto e da maneira como fazemos. Fiquei muito presa, pronto, fiquei muito agarrada do ponto de vista clínico, muito nos processos de luto, não é? Nos processos de luto, nos processos de quando as crianças, por exemplo, acompanham os pais com doença crónica ou com um anúncio de uma partida. Fiquei muito preso nessa lógica e, de facto, nesta dimensão cultural, e quanto, de facto, depois mapear isto e perceber o que é que, de facto, aqui pode ser diferenciador pela positiva, fiquei muito presa nessa ideia. Eu fui ouvindo assim as várias coisas, mas de facto da comunicação surge-me assim uma palavra, generosidade, porque não sei explicar muito bem porquê, mas tive a sensação que ele trouxe em tão pouco tempo foi dantesco, e portanto fiquei muito com a sensação de um momento de muita generosidade e muita partilha muito verdadeira. Foi assim, se tivesse que sumariar este momento, acho que era a palavra até que elegia. Porque do conteúdo foi tanto que isto, eu fiquei presa neste bocadinho, mas há muito mais. Mas fiquei sobretudo invadida por acho que foi mesmo generoso, desde aqueles primeiros momentos mais informais em que a professora Marina estava um bocadinho a conversar com eles e que nós fomos ouvindo, até de facto este fecho, e senti muito isso, não é? Senti muito que houve aqui mesmo muito partilhado, tendo em conta o momento do evento, acho que é isso, acho que a palavra que me surge é generoso. Mas fiquei muito presa e se calhar a ser muito redutora, mas fiquei muito presa, lá está, nesta experiência clínica destes processos, até mais nisto, de quando nós os acompanhamos e quando eles estão a ter que partilhar aqui a partida de alguém e o quanto nós sentimos isto do ponto de vista terapêutico, a dificuldade que isto é, não é? E as perguntas que nos colocam mesmo de quase prescrevam o que fazer e o quão desafiante é de facto depois nós encontrarmos ali um ponto intermédio de suportar aquele sistema naquele momento tão desafiador, mas de facto não constituirmos mais ruído do que aquilo que já é desafio naquele momento. Gostei mesmo muito, foi uma surpresa agradável, confesso-vos que não conhecia nada do trabalho, portanto foi mesmo assim, um ouvir pela primeira vez, foi mesmo muito agradável.
É muito engraçado, como já de facto, ele também sublinhou coisas que uma pessoa já foi sempre lendo na literatura, pequenas coisas, mas como isto da abordagem mais próxima de ouvir o pensamento e o que vai na cabeça das crianças e que elas dizem, que foi o método usado pelo Piaget.
Exatamente, eu ouvi-los.
O método era, mas como isso também desafia, não é? Não só, eu acho que não é só, eu pus isso também na época histórica e social, e o tipo de pessoas com que ele contactou, o Piaget, por aí fora, tudo isso, evidentemente. Mas é muito engraçado como isso também desafia algum do conhecimento que temos. E se este conhecimento é da mesma natureza daquele que o Piaget foi buscar, ou se é de outra natureza e também por isso é que, não é? Põe aqui questões muito interessantes.
E acho que também achei muito interessante quando sublinhou que também não é só ouvirmos a criança para aprendermos nós com a criança, mas para a criança ser ouvida e ela própria dispor dessa informação, dessa oportunidade e dessa informação de uns dos outros, não é? A quantidade de facto de dimensões em que pode depois acabar sempre por imperar um certo adultocentrismo e este cuidado muito meticuloso, não é? De estar constantemente a questioná-lo e a tentar desmontar isso, não é?
Ok.
Mas eu acho que estes seminários que tens conseguido fazer, Marina, de programa doutoral, são muito importantes e muito ricos, porque acho que, de facto, dá uma magnitude ao programa doutoral que sai das aulinhas, quer dizer, não é o currículozinho, não é? E é mesmo, lá está, em termos do próprio staff da faculdade, termos estas oportunidades com cada programa doutoral, que acho que é realmente ao nível de uma academia, pelo menos do que eu tenho a oportunidade de ir vivendo a academia, nos momentos mais altos de formação e de janela para a investigação. Acho que é onde as pessoas estão realmente...
E queiramos ou não, pode custar reservar este bocado no meio das 1001 coisas que de facto hoje são exigidas, mas a verdade é um bocado como as aulas de ginástica, né? Custa aí, mas depois
custa sair.
Faz bem, depois faz bem.
Faz pensar.
Mas custa sair.
Mas acho que poderias ponderar se não vale a pena apostar mais neste formato online, mesmo com oradores residentes, porque de facto talvez seja mais viável ir à aula de ginástica do ginásio da rua.
Não, mas eu mesmo aqui gostava mesmo de perceber a dinâmica que houve de ativar pessoas para vir para aqui, que é para perceber os canais.
Houve muita gente das nossas relações de investigação, ou seja, quando eu estou a recolher dados e quando estou a falar deste tipo de interesse nas crianças, desta vez eu também recrutei os nossos participantes e as nossas pessoas das instituições de acolhimento, muita gente estava aqui das recolhas que estamos a fazer, que de alguma forma vão ficando curiosos por este envolvimento, e quando nós discutimos, portanto, sim, isso também aconteceu aqui, e lá está, eu tornei-me uma fã da investigação com crianças, e portanto é impossível não galvanizar um bocado as pessoas à minha volta, mas e foi
estudantes de doutoramento, posso estar errada, mas só contei 5.
Ok.
Estudantes do primeiro ano, não estou a dizer doutoramento, estou a dizer mal. Depois havia a Márcia, por exemplo, outras pessoas que são estudantes de doutoramento, mas eu estou a dizer do primeiro ano, né? Contei 5. Eles são 23 ou 24, não é?
Oh, Marina, mas isso é como ter epistemologia no primeiro ano. A maior parte não entendo, mas pronto. A maior parte está mesmo no primeiro ano e começou a licenciatura.
Como tu dizias, esta conferência, de facto, eu acho que tem, enfim, até talvez em termos de nível, vai mais para quem já está
com outra reflexão.
Já há uns tempos no doutoramento, ou já, enfim, de facto, noutro plano, não é? Isto tem, de facto, aqui uma riqueza enorme que é difícil apanhar com os estudantes de primeiro ano também reconheço isso. Muito bem, e, portanto, com os espanholitos mais adiantados na hora.
Sim, bom congresso!
Obrigada, Marina, eu não sei se nós voltamos.
Nós estamos tão bem, vocês, não, se a gente não aparecer, não me estranhem. O sítio é acho que ficamos por aqui. Acho que já vamos de sabática, já fico por cá.
Muito bem, muito bem. Também é para isso que eu saio destas coisas. Tchau, beijinhos.
Deus. Fiquem bem. Foi bom rever-te, Isabel. Cuida bem de ti, Deus.
Muy bien. Te voy allí en un minuto. Gracias. Estamos buscando uma Margarida, a colega da Santa Casa, que vai fazer parte do simpósio. É melhor apagar. Da Santa Casa da Misericórdia.